Dr. Jennifer Zelovitsky. I'm a medical doctor, a menopause specialist, and a mom to 2 girls. I have over 10 years of experience helping women deal with the biggest yet overlooked part of women's health, menopause and perimenopause. If you've ever felt like you're going through midlife alone, you're not. And if you've ever wondered if what you're experiencing isn't normal, we're going to talk about it. Make sure to subscribe to the Medsplaining podcast on your favorite podcast platform to never miss an episode. Let's get into it. Before we get started today, I want to invite you to check out my new Substack page where I'll be sharing even more about women's health. It's your go-to spot for safe, reliable, Canadian-based, board-certified information designed to support you through every phase. The link's in the bio, so head there if you want honest, helpful insight on everything from hormones to mental health. And while you're at it, hop on over to Instagram to sign up for the Perimenopause Power Plan, a 4-week course packed with everything you need to feel prepared, supported, and informed. Whether you're just starting to notice symptoms, knee-deep in the fog, or looking to get ahead of the game, this course gives you videos, worksheets, and real tools to help you feel better, take control of your health, and confidently talk to your doctor about what you need. All right, with that, let's start the show. Welcome to Medsplaining, where we talk about all the ways women's health impacts every part of our lives, from hormones to headspace and everything in between. Today's guest is Penny Light, founder of Grit and Grace, a clothing brand that's grown into something much more, a space for women to gather, talk, and support each other. Penny also started Grit and Grace Adventures, organizing transformational vacations that prove just how powerful this phase of our life can be. But what makes her story really resonate is how it all started, from a health spiral that so many of us know all too well. We're talking about that moment when you look in the mirror and think, where did I go? So today, we're diving into that moment of disappearance and the reappearance that can happen when we take charge of our health. Penny, welcome to Medsplaining.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited.
Yay. So Penny, why don't you take us back to that moment 5 years ago when you started Grit and Grace, and where were you at mentally, physically, if you can describe that time in your life for us?
Yeah, that was the start of the global pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And I had been living in Costa Rica already now for 6 full years and had a long distance relationship with my now husband for a year. And so the world shut down while I was in Costa Rica and he was in Canada. And we had this conversation about whether I should come back to Canada, whether I should stay in Costa Rica. Of course, I was thinking the beach was a better place to be. And he was like, with me is a better place to be. And, we thought this would be 3 months.
Yeah.
Top 6 months, I'd be going home. Long story short, I got on the last repatriate flight and came back to Canada with one suitcase, not knowing I wouldn't be going home for another 3 years. So I landed back in Canada. The world shut down. I was in tourism in Costa Rica. I have a marketing company there catering to high-end tourism companies. I also was hosting women's retreat under Live Life Light Adventures at the time. And I arrived back in Canada to instant partnership. He has 2 young kids, so instant step parenting, new home, and no job, and no Canadian appropriate clothing.
Wow.
So I had to go shopping, and I went out and tried to find some clothes for myself for Canada, and the shopping experience was horrible. The service was terrible, and more so for women our age. I felt like it was either crop tops or sweaters with ducks on them.
Yes.
So I came home really frustrated and feeling really crappy about myself, to be honest. Nothing about the experience made me feel good or gave me any kind of confidence. And so my husband's in retail, secondhand retail, which is very different, which we've now learned from new retail. And he said, well, why don't you open a store? And I was like, what? I don't know anything about retail. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the world is shut down.
Yes.
And he's like, well, what else are you going to do? And I'm like, that's true. So I had to actually create a job for myself. And I also needed clothing. And I was really missing female connection. And I was really missing that shopping experience that's supposed to be fun and joyful and all of that. So Grit and Grace was born for my dream closet, but also a place for women to gather and connect. And in designing the stores, I made sure that that space was available to us. So every store has like a living room type concept in the change room where you can sit and feel like you're in your sister's closet, which is really fun.
That's really wonderful.
Thank
and
you.
you don't feel rushed. You don't feel
No,
judged.
you
Like you feel like you have a support network
Yeah.
instead of just your own self staring in the mirror at you, trying to figure out how
Exactly.
the world's going to perceive you when you step out
Exactly.
in that outfit. That's a very cool concept, and one that
Yeah.
I really hadn't heard about before I heard about your store.
Yeah, and the change rooms will have mirrors so you can stay in or you can come out. I know that some retailers design it so that you come out and the sales pitch can happen once you're out of the change room. That's why
Yeah.
they don't put mirrors in change rooms. Fun fact.
Yes.
So our change rooms all have mirrors, but they're also big enough to spin in, and you can also come out and feel very safe and comfortable. And the ethos of the business and all my staff is trained to make women feel comfortable and confident. So we're not telling you something looks great on you if it doesn't. We're honest and making sure you feel really great in your
That's
clothing.
amazing. And you've written so beautifully about that moment where you're like, you described it as disappearing.
Mm.
What was going through your mind and body at that particular time?
Oh, so much. So it was a lot at that time in my life, starting a new business, global pandemic, step parenting. I don't have children of my own, so that was a whole thing. Partnership, I'm 50 now. At the time I was 44 and I'd been alone, happily single for a long
Sure.
time. So now I'm sharing space. So I had all of these things going on and I kept blaming how I was feeling, which was exhausted, brain fog. The negative self-talk was so loud. Like it seemed there was nothing, I couldn't believe what I was saying to myself in my head actually, because it wasn't something I'd ever experienced before. So I thought, oh, I've just got a lot going on. Like this is, and yes, that was part of it, but it felt bigger than that. It felt bigger than me and I couldn't escape it. I did hypnotherapy. I thought maybe this will help me. I tried all the things. I was, taking all the vitamins. I thought, okay, well, we're on lockdown. I'm in Canada. There's no more vitamin D. So I was like dousing myself in vitamin D, but nothing was working. And then I don't know, intuitively, I thought, I mean, I really thought something was wrong. I actually said to my husband a few times, like, I don't know, maybe I have a tumor. Like that seems so dramatic, but like it really, really felt wrong. Everything in my body felt off. And, I was like, am I depressed? I've never really been depressed before, but something intuitively said hormones. And I've always been pretty in tune with my body. And the idea of antidepressants didn't sound right to me either. I think they're great for those who need them, but I wasn't sure that was what was going on.
Yeah.
So I reached out to a friend, actually, a fellow woman who was around a little bit older than me, but was going through some nutritional training. So, and she had spoken a little bit about hormones. And so I sat down to lunch with her, and I think this was before, and I don't know if it's just my algorithm feeding me all the things now because of the age and the things I'm following.
Yeah.
But, 4 to 5 years ago, I think the information around menopause and perimenopause has come out at rapid fire speed in the best way possible. But like even as little as 4 to 5 years ago, there wasn't a lot of conversations happening.
Yeah, really until 2022.
Okay, so I'm not crazy thinking
no,
that.
not
It's
at
been
all.
fast and furious, right?
Fast and furious, for sure.
So I sat down with her before that, and it was in secret. It was like whispered in a cafe, like, I think this is what's happening. And so she shared with me a little bit about what she was learning about hormones, but it was from a naturopathic standpoint. So actually you spoke about this on one of your podcasts. It was Bioidenticals.
Yeah.
And so that was the first kind of step I took towards learning how to manage my hormones.
Which isn't unusual because at the time, that's all that was available. After the Women's Health Initiative, all women could turn to was the naturopathic bioidentical route, right? So so you were not alone.
Yeah, and and I ended up at this, like, I guess I can't say names, but I think he's 90, this doctor, but apparently a pioneer in women's bioidentical health. And I ended up in his office, and it was super old school, like dusty books and no computers or anything like that. But the first thing he said to me, which I thought was incredible, was, I don't think any woman should have to suffer through this stage of their life. In fact, she should be thriving. And I thought, okay, cool. I'm on board. Let's do this. So he did some blood work, and my DHEA levels were that of a 94-year-old.
Okay.
And I said to him, what would cause that? He's like, stress. I'm like, I'm not stressed. I can handle, like, I didn't feel stressed and my cortisol levels were fine. And he said, chronic stress. And that was when I really understood the word chronic, because I was like, that's over time. So he said, how have the last like 3 to 5 years been of your life? And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So he started me on DHEA, some bioidentical estrogen cream. And then the information started coming about, right? And that, bioidenticals can't be measured properly.
Well, and DHEA, it's not really it's not something I measure. It's not something that's like a target for treatment, right? It's a precursor of testosterone, which, I mean, it's not really something we can focus on for women. So I just want to put that out there because I don't want everyone thinking,
I didn't know.
I need to get my DHEA checked. You know what I mean? It's there. It's a player in the game, but it's a minor character, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So of course, I was just trusting anyone.
Of course not. And what I love is that he hit the nail on the head when he said women shouldn't have to suffer.
That was just the real game changer.
Yeah.
And I was I was a crazy person. Like, aside from all those other things, like the rage and the mood swings and the outbursts and like all of the things. And it was like, I didn't recognize myself.
This is exactly
like, who is this person?
Yeah. This is what it's described as. It isn't clinical depression. It isn't clinical anxiety. It's the feeling of, I don't feel like myself, which is really hard. That's not a clinical diagnosis, but it's what women in the menopause transition are feeling. And it's very, very valid.
And it's big and troublesome, and even physically looking in the mirror saying, who is this person that I don't recognize anymore?
At what point did you realize that maybe you were on the right path? And well, first of all, how were you feeling on those compounded?
I started to feel it took a long time to feel better.
Okay.
A little bit better.
Okay.
And I would a little bit at that time felt like a lot. Because I would take anything.
Often the compounded creams underdose for estrogen, so that's part of the problem. Yeah.
So it was 3 to 4 months before I really started to feel a little bit better, like a little closer to myself. So, but I was taking anything I could get at that point, right? I was like, I'll take anything. But then more information started coming out, and wonderful people like you were providing us with information about the difference between bioidenticals, and I can't speak professionally doing that. So that's for you to do, but and synthetic, that they're actually kind of the same thing, and you can, is that right?
Well, synthetic just means it was manufactured in a lab. I mean, when you're using an estrogen patch or a gel, it wasn't growing as a patch on a tree, right? Like, it has to be synthesized into a molecule that can be absorbed through your skin. So when we say synthetic, it's kind of used in two different ways, right? Like the synthetic meaning the molecule doesn't look like your own natural molecule, which is one way people use that term. Like a birth control pill, the estrogen and the progesterone look very different. Or it means something has been synthesized for use in the human body, right? So when you use it that way, it's all of them are, even the bioidentical compounds, are still synthetic because they didn't find the cream growing in a patch somewhere.
Right? And, I think that so many people hear bioidentical, they think all natural, and it feels safer to them. And they're still subscribing to that old narrative and the old research that's been debunked. Thank goodness now for the sake of all women. So I was starting to learn more and do more research because I still wasn't feeling 100% myself. And so as I learned more from the information that was provided to us, I decided to switch to synthetic with,
And how did you accomplish that? Because that's the other major barrier, right? Is huge. Finding a doctor, a family doctor that's willing to talk about hormone therapy, or getting to a menopause specialist.
Yeah. And I have so many girlfriends who are struggling and long waits. I am really, really fortunate. I've grown up with my doctor. So I started seeing her. She had just graduated from medical school. Even though I was abroad for many years, when I came back, I picked up the phone. She's like, I can find you a doctor closer. I'm like, absolutely no, not. I will drive to the ends of the earth and I'm going to my grave with you. And she's amazing. So I am very, very fortunate that I know that's not the case for most women. So the minute I said to her I was struggling, she was like, okay, immediately. Absolutely. And she actually recognized that not all gynecologists support HRT. And I said, well, I want one who does. And she said, well, I can't really know. So what I'm going to do, it was like throwing pasta against the wall. She booked me. And in Guelph, there's a 3-year wait for a gynecologist. I actually got a call this morning, ironically, from the gynecologist whose wait list I was on from 2 years ago.
Oh.
And she's like, we have an appointment. I'm like, I'm good, thanks. But yeah, which is crazy. So she said, are you willing to drive? So the other thing is, are you willing to step out of the town you're in, the village you're in, the blocks that you're in? And I said, I will drive anywhere. Like, I just want to find a solution. So she booked me 5 appointments with 5 different gynecologists to see. And it's like, you're not going to go to a therapist you don't like. You need to know that you trust your gynecologist.
Yes. And it's in this particular area of care, it's sad that you had to be referred, first of all, to a gynecologist. Family doctors are perfectly happy to prescribe birth control pills.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to prescribe hormone therapy. They weren't taught anything about it.
They weren't taught. And she said that. She said, I don't know enough.
But the fact that then you never know, you're just as likely to have a gynecologist who shuts that door in your face as you are to have one that opens that discussion up and helps you.
3 out of 5 that I went to said no.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. And thankfully I did find a gynecologist. I saw her yesterday, actually, her lovely Pashmere experience. But and she's super supportive and wonderful and gives me time to talk and all the things. So and then that, to answer your question, was a game changer. It's like that, the patch, the progesterone.
And how quickly did that work?
Almost immediately.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing.
Almost
it's not always immediate for everybody, but more often than not, you know right away the difference between those, consistent, regulated Health Canada formulations. Compounded has its place. Sometimes people aren't able to tolerate the Health Canada formulations, and we use a reliable compounding pharmacy. But that's few and far between. The vast majority of women tolerate it so well and do really well on it.
And sleep, ladies, like just to sleep. It's like to have a full night's sleep and not be waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so many things, but that was a huge, wow, to sleep.
And then what impact did that have on your ability to grow your business, manage your parenting duties and your, relationship situation?
So many. One of the things too, when I couldn't tap into any, and I was a super creative person. Like I could sit and write and write and write. And that was like my outlet. I didn't have an original thought. Like I couldn't access any amount of creativity. And it was like going through the motions. Of course, I was opening Grit and Grace clothing, open a second store, open a third store. So I was doing the things I had to do. But the new ideas, the exciting stuff, the creativity, I couldn't access that at all. Even on the Bioidenticals, wasn't there. And then when the HRT, the patch, the progesterone, when that all started and kicked in, it was like a curtain was lifted. I also sat in front of a therapist a lot. And, I said the exact words to her. I said, I'm looking out at my life and I don't see myself reflected back. And it was many things. I was like, who's this stepmom? Who's this partner? Who's this business owner? Who's this person living in Guelph, Ontario after being in Costa Rica?
Exactly,
no slight. Guelph is a wonderful place, but
it's awesome.
I didn't.
It's different.
It's different. Slightly different. And winter, but I wasn't recognizing myself. And she said, well, what would your life need to look like when you looked out on it for you to recognize yourself? And I said, I need to be connecting with women. I need to be sharing my love of travel with women. I need to be creating safe spaces for women, and she's like, okay, so do that. And I was like, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I do that? Again, I'm feeling better. And it was like a click.
And is that when you brought back
Grit and Grace? So I relaunched, rebranded.
Yep.
My true love. So Grit and Grace Adventures was born just over a year ago.
Wow. Tell me about that.
Gosh, this is bringing so much joy to my life. It's, travel has really changed me and helped me grow as a person. It's, when you're traveling, not that you can't be who you are anywhere, but you really can just shoulders drop and relax into who you are when you're traveling. For some reason, any preconceived notions about people's judgments slip away because you're in a new place, you can see whoever you want to be, but mostly you're just yourself. When you step off of that plane in a new country, all judgments slip away or fear of judgment slip away. So
unless it's like White Lotus.
Do you know how real that is coming from the luxury tourism industry? It's cringeworthy people don't get murdered, but I have friends still, well, obviously in Costa Rica, who are in the luxury tourism business. And I'm like, you have to watch White Lotus. And they watch one episode and they're like, Penny, don't do that to me. That's like coming home from work and watching work. Like, no. And so they won't watch it.
Right. That's like people telling me I need to watch every medical show on TV.
Yeah,
and I'm
like,
I'm
no,
good. I'm good.
No. What, life isn't like Grey's Anatomy? No.
Not quite. Not quite.
Yeah, so it's not White Lotus, but you do step off and you do feel like you can just really, really be yourself. And I've found a lot of healing in traveling. And so it was really important to me pre-COVID with Live Life Light Adventures to share, to bring women together into that space and go on adventures and most importantly, stepping out of our comfort zones. Mm-hmm. So there's a really great book, I don't know if you've read it, called The Comfort Crisis. So it's, it's something I've always thought and felt, and even with our children and raising kids when we get to that too, is that we're not meant to live this perfectly comfortable life where the roads are perfect and our temperature of our cars are perfect. And we're meant to step out of it, especially cognitively. We're meant to be a little bit uncomfortable and have to think on our feet literally when the ground's not even and when there's a different language being spoken. And so I think even as we get older as women, traveling, stepping out of our comfort zones helps our cognitive abilities too and keeps us, sharp per se, because you have to think differently when you're in another country and you have to learn a little bit of the language and you have to learn a little bit of the customs and you have to adjust to uneven ground. It's interesting, in Greece, I had 2 women fall because the ground's not perfect. It's cobblestone and they're not used to walking that way, So it was just an observation of this whole comfort crisis that we're in. So I think getting out of our comfort zones when we travel is also a really important part of it. So yeah, I launched Grit and Grace Adventures just over a year ago and to see these women come together and it's more focused now. It's for women of wisdom. Oh, so, I say like 45 plus. The average age of women that come is around 55, but I've had the same woman actually in her 60s bring her younger daughter who was 35. And then she came back on another trip and brought her mom who was 80. That was really cool and beautiful, actually. So that was really nice too. But yeah, to see them come together, relax, share. And the women are all in transition. So it's either kids are getting ready to go off to school or kids have left or they're changing jobs or they're getting divorced. Yeah. It's something is changing in their lives and or it's perimenopause or they've just started HRT and they're like, I'm a new person. I want to book a trip.
Somewhere hot now.
And also, and also the selflessness, like now it's time. It's time to take care of me. It's time to ask myself what I want. And when you remove yourself from your everyday roles as mom, parent, career, all of that, and get into someplace completely different, you actually have time to think about that. Like, who am I and what do I want in life?
And you did write about the grandmother hypothesis.
Isn't that amazing?
So how did that come to your attention and what does that mean to you? Like, what's your takeaway from learning about the grandmother hypothesis?
Yeah, I wish I should have written this down. I don't actually remember. Okay. It was an article. I want to say maybe it was in the Global. I don't remember where. Okay. It was an article that came to me and I read it and I was like, damn, yes. So the idea that, I think for a long time, women have thought or been told to believe that in the menopause years or after our childbearing years, you're invisible. Now what's your purpose? If you're not making babies and, your looks are changing, all of that. But the grandmother hypothesis suggests that there's an evolutionary reason why we actually stop menstruating and exit out of those childbearing years. And that is for our wisdom years to come to light so that we can guide, so that we can lead, so that we can mold the next generations. And hell yeah, I have never felt more powerful. I've always said finding my voice has been my life's work. And I feel like it's coming in, I'm coming into it now. I feel more confident sharing my voice. I feel more confident speaking out. I feel like, I know I don't know everything. Of course, there's still lots to learn, but
that's also the beauty of
it.
Yeah.
Is that I might be wrong.
Be this age and I am still learning. I'm constantly learning.
And I want to learn more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. But you have to be feeling in the right headspace. Like I sometimes explain to patients or just women I'm talking to, they're like, why do I have this brain fog? Right. It's like, well, because in the caveman days, we didn't live 30 years.
Right.
Beyond our menopause. Let's be honest. We maybe got 10 years after our menopause and our existence was gathering berries helping with the
Yeah.
younger kids in the tribe,
Yeah.
and helping to be the eyes and ears of our
Yeah.
family so that we could help get them all to adulthood, right? We were the wisdom leaders, the
Yeah.
thought leaders of the
Yeah.
group, but we weren't called on to have these higher level executive functioning skills like we are now.
Yeah.
Now we're running businesses, we're
Yeah.
physicians, I don't know, we're doing a podcast, we're doing all of these things that require a higher level of
Yeah.
thinking. And that is not originally a place we would have found ourselves in. So I do think it's important that you use the tools, whatever they may be. For some women, it is hormone therapy. For other women, they don't need it, but they definitely need to tackle those lifestyle items, or they do
100%.
need to get out of their box and start using their mind and using their body more. And so I think that's really important.
And the world
that we
needs
keep
us.
connecting. Absolutely.
You know, the communities need us to lead and to guide and to, not that we need more on our plates, but
No, definitely not.
You know, but I think we have a lot to offer
Yeah.
now. We have more to offer now. And I reflect, I did 18 years in corporate before I went off on my own and
Oh, wow.
quit it all and moved to Costa Rica. And, when I think about my days in corporate, because correct me if I'm wrong, but in my own experience, I feel like there's two big hormonal shifts. Like I remember having night sweats in my early 30s, like waking up in the middle. So I feel like something happened then, and then something was happening now. And, I've got a lot of young girls working for me in their early 30s and like, why am I getting night sweats? I'm like, I did too at that age, so I don't know what it is.
You can get it definitely premenopause, like premenstrually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it can happen around your cycles.
But when I think about corporate, gosh, if corporate could get on board with, benefits supporting HRT and perimenopausal women and women's cycle, they could get so much more out of us. Maybe I wouldn't have stayed in corporate, but,
you weren't meant to, but
I wasn't meant to, but
10% of women are quitting their jobs out there.
Getting divorced and quitting their jobs.
Because they're not getting the help they need. And that is a crisis.
Yeah.
We had a funny exchange online last week where you were like, somebody help me figure out why the teenage girls in my house are going through this at the same time that I am.
Is that like a cruel evolutionary joke?
Yes. It really hit home for me because my girls are 21 and 19 now. Okay. So they're just easing out of that side of it. Crazy hormonal fluctuation. But they're on a roller coaster and we're on a roller coaster at the same time. And this is something that comes up for me in clinic all the time. It is. It's kind of a cruel joke.
It feels like a cruel joke. But then I have to, I don't know, I think about my mom. No wonder I thought she was crazy. Right? And she didn't have
They didn't even bother to talk about it because
they didn't talk about it?
At that time, like our moms were coming off the heels, I think, are going through menopause just off the heels of the Women's Health Initiative.
Right.
So that was like hormones are going to cause cancer. Mm-hmm. And at that time, less than 2% of women were on hormones and still it's barely budging from that. So I don't remember my mom ever talking about it. Looking back now, she will say, oh, yeah, I had hot flashes or I remember this or that. Definitely there was mood lability there.
Right.
But I didn't recognize it.
Yeah. And she probably didn't even know either.
Exactly.
Our mothers didn't even know.
Well, and as teenagers, we weren't focused on our mom at all. We're the main
We're not
character.
The center of attention.
We're the main character in the story all day, every day, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we can expect our daughters to understand, to give us grace.
Right. And they're 16, and it's my stepdaughter, but she's 16 and
yep.
I try to give her all the information that I was thinking on the car too. I was like, God, I really wish I had all this information about biohacking your cycle and knowing where in your cycle and being able to track it and these apps. And I'm like, you could.
So do I.
Right?
It doesn't.
But they don't
If
care.
only it existed.
We think that. And, and then I'm like, if my mom was saying all these things to me when I was 16, would I be rolling my eye? Probably.
Exactly.
I'd be like, what do you know?
I think that's the difference. In at this phase of our life, we're receptive to advice. We're actually desperately seeking advice and how do I get myself out of this? Maybe it comes from someone who's 16 knowing they have their whole life ahead of them.
They know it all.
And our frame of mind is this what the rest of my life is going to be? I don't know if I can tolerate this. So it's a different
mindset for sure.
They have a lot more reassurance that. But what I said to you was, we don't have HRT for teenagers.
I know. I know.
Unfortunately, but at least
Yeah.
the positive for us is we can get help, whatever
Yeah.
form that might take.
Absolutely.
And,
And in turn, be able to be there and help them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about lifestyle.
Mm.
What are the ways? I know you have a background also as a fitness instructor.
Yeah. And I'm a yoga teacher. Yeah.
So what are the ways that you, with all that you have going on, so many women are struggling, how do I fit in the lifestyle piece, the keeping my body moving, the choosing the right nutrition? What is your approach to all of that?
So this is controversial when I share this. You're number one.
Mm.
And, I don't know if it's controversial or that I fear saying it because I haven't had children. So, of course, it's easy for me to say. But I think because I haven't had children, I've been able to observe all of my girlfriends and women throughout my life who have had children put themselves last. And in putting themselves last, they can't be the best version of themselves for their children or their husband. So I always say this. I say, you're number one. Your husband is number two. Your children are number three. And that's not to say don't feed your kids and leave them. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you are healthy and happy and your relationship is, then your relationship will be healthy and happy and thriving. And then your children see a loving relationship and a happy mom. And then you can both be there as best you can for your children. And then you're raising great children together. So finding the time for you and putting yourself first is so, so important. And also the big question I ask myself is, what's the alternative? Right. And it's not motivation. I am never motivated to do the things, it's consistency.
Exactly.
It's just showing up, if it's in any way, shape, or form, if it's a walk or 5 minutes a day or whatever it is, every single day for you.
Exactly. And you know what? As someone who has given birth to children, and I may not have understood this at the time when I was in my 30s and they were little, and I definitely wasn't exercising and I definitely wasn't taking care of myself, but so few of us are at that age, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I actually do see it for a very clear-eyed reason. I tell my children, I exercise so that you don't have to take care of me when I'm 70.
Yeah.
I don't want to burden you
Yeah.
with having to run to the hospital constantly, find a nursing home for me, and, constantly be worried about me because I didn't prioritize myself. But you also hit on something else that's really important. We beat ourselves up about how that looks or how that shows up. And it doesn't matter. It just matters that you do it.
Mm-hmm.
I saw someone a few weeks ago. I was doing a full assessment with her, and her numbers were not looking very good. Like sugar was high, cholesterol was high, her weight had gone up, she was feeling terrible. And she said, well, I'm full-time babysitting my grandchild now, so I don't have any time to do anything else. And I thought, I hope she talks to her children about the fact that it's wonderful that she's caring for her grandchild, but they're really going to have to be taking care of her in a few years.
Yeah.
I just saw it so clearly,
Yeah.
payback is a what, because there must be a way. I mean, certainly if you can work all day and cook and clean and still find 10 minutes just to go for a walk, just to choose that meal, that might be a bit of a better choice. Yeah. We have to do that, not for ourselves. It is not selfish.
No, it's selfless.
It really is, but it really takes a new mindset and an acceptance of that to see that for what it is. Yes, I'm also not saying it. Some days everything goes out the window, right?
And I think it's important not to beat yourself up on those days either, because that affects you physically and emotionally too. It's so there's acceptance too, that some days are just some days, So finding
exactly, but then it could be 5 minutes of a plank or something.
Yeah.
Like, just do something to make your body feel good. Some nights I just do a stretch before bed because it's all I could manage.
Yeah.
But those little things, they pay dividends later in life. And we have to start thinking about keeping ourselves strong and vital for our family. not in spite of our family.
Yeah. And ask yourself, like, how do you, there's a vision exercise too. If you just free write how you see the next 10 to 20 years, like the perfect day, forget any obligations. I love this exercise. So you just free write. So you remove, money's not an issue. Kids, husband, like nothing is an issue. So your perfect day, 10 to 20 years from now, and start from how you feel when you wake up. Like you wake up, your eyes open slowly. If that's like your dream day or whatever, you feel rested, you feel flexible, you feel like, and you just write that out. So that powerful vision of how you imagine your future self comes into the present when you do that exercise, right? And so you can look at that and you can say the alternative of not being able to do those things is not an option.
Wow.
Right.
I probably haven't done something like that since high school.
It's a really good exercise.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
If there was something that you wish more women would know or believe about perimenopause, about feeling like yourself, what would that be?
It's a big question. I can speak to my own experiences. It's the beginning. Like I really feel like it's the beginning of something great. Like I feel like, if you can get your hormones in check, if you can find the good doctor or whatever it is you need to do to get to feeling more like yourself, once you do, there's a lot of power in us that's just boiling and ready to go, and you can make incredible things happen. I think it's the beginning, not the end.
That's really important. That's really succinct
Yeah.
because we do feel like we're coming to the end of something. There can be a grieving process that comes from
there should be
the birds leaving the nest.
I feel like there should. I'm still getting my periods, knock on wood, but I had a moment where one was really, really late, and I thought,
knock on wood that they stop. Or
well, I don't know, because they say it's good to have them, and then I'm like over it, whatever.
Sure, I think I'm kind of like, I'm kind of over this.
But I remember, like, it was about a year ago, and I thought, this is my first missed period.
Yeah.
And I got really sad. I was surprised at how I felt about it. And I called my best friend. I'm like, we need to have a conversation about this. Like, when our daughters get their periods, there's, kind of a big deal, or, the whole red tent thing. But like, what are we doing when we don't get our periods anymore? Should we be celebrating, grieving, reflecting? Like, I went into a deep state of reflection, and then I got my period like a week later, and it's still coming.
We call up our grade 8 gym teacher who taught us sex ed and say, what do you have for me? What do you have? What do you have to help me through this one?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I feel like it's also, maybe it's a good time to actually sit down and reflect on the lives that we've lived and what we want next. And maybe it's a good kick in the...
Yeah, I mean, we outlive our menopause by 30 to 35 years. That's a long time.
My granny lived to 103. She just passed this.
What was her secret?
Oh, this is amazing. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She said my grandparents were married for 75 years. My grandpa died at 99. Both of old age.
What?
Perfectly healthy. Yeah. I think as a doctor you would love
okay,
that.
Okay, I need the secret.
Yeah. So, and after grandpa died, which was the August before, I knew Granny was following. Like she was just ready to go find her love of her life in wherever that is next. So I asked her, I said, at one point, Granny, what is the secret to longevity and to this beautiful marriage that you've had? And, the obvious, never go to bed angry, say your prayers together every night. So, but more specifically, shared values. So they had, and she used to say this to me all the time with my husband when we'd visit. She'd look at us, she'd be like, you guys have the same values, right? You fundamentally share that you want the same things out of life, right? Super important. Yeah, I know. I get a little. So, and her and my grandfather had a strong faith, so they said their prayers together every night. They went to church together every Sunday. So they had a very strong shared value system. Never fall out of love at the same time. Yeah. And, it's a dance. If you're married for 75 years, you're not loving each other every single day. It's no
hard.
Way.
Life can be challenging. I thought you were going to say whiskey and cigarettes or something when you were like, are you ready for this? I'm like, was she one of these 3 whiskeys a day and cigarettes and then lived to 103?
She made her own wine. That was what? Make your own wine.
That's key.
Make your own wine.
That is key.
Don't eat a lot of sugar.
Yes.
Which was funny because she baked a lot and put a lot of sugar in everything. But she did say don't eat a lot of sugar.
Maybe she wasn't
and
eating
fried
it.
food. Actually, that was the other one. Don't eat fried food. which was interesting too. And I did this like DNA test once for DNA for your health, not for your family. And genetically, our side of the family has a propensity, like a specific taste bud for fried food. So we should actually stay away from fried food because we'll eat more of it. And I love fried chicken and French fries. I don't eat it, but I would if you gave me a bucket.
That's the thing. Some people, it's like all or nothing, right? With that kind of stuff. Well, Granny's wisdom, I think, is going to impact a lot of people today and their relationships, because relationships are challenged. Yeah. With perimenopause.
Oh, and never stop moving. That was her other. Never stop moving. How did I forget that one?
Well, that's really important.
And she was walking till the day she died.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And insistent on it. Like, can we help you? Great. No, I got this. I'm walking. Never stop moving.
Very sage advice.
Right? Yeah.
A wise woman.
Yeah.
It worked. And obviously that advice worked because they both lived to be a nice, ripe old age, which is beautiful. That's what we all want. And to die of old age.
And one final one. Mm-hmm. Smile, and the whole world smiles with you. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
If someone is listening right now and they're really looking for to take that first step to start challenging themselves, maybe they want to book a trip, but they just can't get started. They can't get themselves moving in that direction. What advice do you have for them?
The great thing about Grit and Grace Adventures is I do everything for you. I don't book flights, but I have someone who can help you book flights. But you just have to show up. And then everything is taken care of for you. I gifted myself for my 50th birthday. I went to India for the month. And the most incredible thing that stood out for me, I delved into my 300-hour yoga teacher training, but was that I didn't have to think. I was told where to be, at what time, when breakfast, lunch, and dinner was, when to go wake up, when to go to bed. Like, I didn't have to think for 30 days. Now, my trips aren't 30 days long, but imagine for, 7 to 10 days, you don't have to think. You just have to show up. Everything's taken care of for you. You can come solo. My groups are small, so it's small group boutique travel, never more than 10 women. And depending on the country, sometimes it's 5 women. If it's all single rooms, which at this age we tend to want our own rooms.
Right.
But everything is taken care of for you. And after the first day, everyone is friends. In that small boutique group travel kind of experience, I do that so that we can all have those meaningful connections and those meaningful conversations. Talk to me. I'll hop on the phone with you. I can walk you through every step of the process. And it's feels scary at first, but once you show up and settle into it, you will have the time of your life and go back a changed and a new person.
What a gift for someone who's probably, we're talking about women who've probably been the decision maker, the planner, the one who has to map out every aspect of every family vacation.
I feel like Google sometimes, don't you? Like, what's the weather like today? I'm like, let me check my phone that you have in your hand.
Exactly, right? Canada 311. Yeah. And what's your website so people can find you?
Grit and Grace Adventures with an S.com, and then gritandgraceclothing.com.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, that brings us to the end of the episode. My guest has been Penny Light. Please go check her out at gritandgraceadventures.com, gritandgraceclothing.com. I want you to follow us on Substack or head on over to the link in my bio to sign up for our perimenopause power prep course. We also are on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube so that you never have to miss an episode. Like, subscribe, all the things. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok at Medsplaining. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM. And if you like this episode, the best thing you can do is tell a friend or rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast so other women can discover it. And don't forget, if you're listening to this, you may be happy to know that we video every single episode, so you can watch it if you prefer on YouTube. See you next week. Medsplaining is produced by Ghost Bureau. Thank you for tuning in to Medsplaining. While we strive to provide accurate and insightful information, this podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed by our host and guests are their own and should not be interpreted as medical advice. Every individual's health situation is unique, and it is crucial to consult with a qualified healthcare provider regarding your specific concerns and conditions. Additionally, any links, resources, or references mentioned in our episodes are provided for informational purposes only and are not sponsored by Medsplaining. The producers and hosts of Medsplaining assume no responsibility or liability for any actions taken as a result of listening to our podcast. We encourage you to use the information presented here as a starting point for discussions with your healthcare provider. Information and references are subject to change based on scientific evidence as it evolves over time. The hosts and producers of Medsplaining are not responsible for future changes to the information and references and assume no obligation to update based on future developments. Remember, your health and well-being are paramount. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to exploring more topics in women's health with you in future episodes.